inner values, to build up kind of certain, to practice certain values which will help us in a kind of long run, in a distant future. Our kind of main purpose of life should not be just kind of solving the little problems of the life. Let's take an example from our kind of real life. Most of you may be parents, so you may know that kids, most of the time, they are very playful and they don't care about their education and they don't care about the distant future. And we say it's a very, very kiddie kind of approach or kiddie thinking. Very immature young people thinking. But compared to the kids, the parents may plan for much more longer period and for a distant future. Like what should they be doing to secure old age? What should they be doing to secure kind of things after 10 years, after 20 years, those kind of planning. So we say that, oh, that is a very mature approach. We should be doing like that instead of kind of the way kids do the things. So in the similar way, the kind of priorities and the importance of the life where they put as a common human being for the highly realized kind of practitioners, like the Aryas and the Arhats, it appears to them like that. We're just thinking about our plan in common kind of approach. Our plan is just limited up to the death. And we don't really look forward to plan beyond that. In many occasions, most of the time, many people even don't believe that there is an existence beyond the death. And it's a very common trend in the present world that we have to kind of argue with them, argue with many people to prove the existence beyond the death. But sometimes nowadays, there are also some people who get interested in these ideas and these kind of teachings. They try to prove through the scientific research that there is an existence beyond the death. But it's a kind of quite challenging area. Because science is based on, we say, empirical proof. If there is no empirical proof, it is very, very difficult for science to accept the things. So, a presence of the being after the death is almost impossible to have any kind of empirical proof for that. But there is no other proof. Scientists also is very skeptical to say that kind of life doesn't exist beyond the death. The scientists have, once again, if they claim that, they need to provide empirical kind of proofs. They cannot provide any kind of empirical proofs for that. So it's really also quite challenging for scientists to say that the life doesn't exist after the death. They're also very skeptical to kind of accept the idea that life exists after death. Somehow, according to the Buddhism, and not just the Buddhism, in many other kind of religion and many other spiritual tradition and contemplative tradition, the existence of life after the death is a kind of very common idea. Let's look at thing in this way. If life doesn't exist after the death, is it better for us, or is it better to believe in life exists after the death? From our common approach, as an individual, it is much more kind of, how to say, it is much more kind of comfortable to believe or to kind of accept the idea that the existence of life after the death. If there is an existence of life after the death, there is a hope. Whatever we can do today, it is possible that it can be done after the death. There is a hope for it. But for those people who doesn't agree with the existence of life after the death, they don't have any hope if they don't do anything in this life. Because their achievement and their kind of possibility to do something is just limited up to the death. It won't go beyond that. So, hope is something that really make a lot of kind of how to say, it really make the people comfortable and looking for kind of optimistic. So from that perspective, even for an individual's approach, it is much better to kind of individual feelings approach. It is much better to believe that the existence of life is there after the death. Somehow it is like that. There are a lot of arguments against those kind of things, against each other. Somehow the most important thing is the life after the death, the concept of life after death, the idea of life after the death has been existing in human society for kind of many thousand years, and it will kind of, how to say, continue in the future. And there are benefits of having this kind of ideas and concept. And what is the reality? People may feel like that. What is the reality? But the reality, there are a couple of ways to kind of confirm the reality. One way is the scientific approach, kind of empirical kind of proof. And another way is through reasoning. Through reasoning, reality can be also proved. But this kind of reality can be only proved through the reasoning. Cannot be proved through the empirical kind of proof. Let's talk about how the kind of reality can be proved by the reasoning. Let's talk about the theory of gravity. It was proposed through the reasoning, and it is still not empirically kind of provable. There is a gravity. So there are kind of theories also kind of put forward the ideas like there are possibilities of gravitrons or something like that. But these are all based on the reasoning. None of these things can be proved empirically. So can we say that all the scientists are kind of claiming all these kind of nonsense things? Of course not. They will have their own reason behind it. So in a similar way, those people who claim the kind of existence of life after death, they will have their own reason. It is not just a kind of empty word uttered by someone else without any kind of reasoning. Those people have contemplated for many long years, and then did a thorough study and research and then contemplation, and as a result of that, they put forward their ideas. So from that perspective and from that angle, it's really a how to say, really more reasonable to accept the idea about the existence of life after the death. So if there is a life after the death, so what happens then? Then comes into the picture the very profound and very powerful theory that is propounded by Buddha Shakyamuni, the causality, the relationship between cause and effect, the relationship between causes and its result. So, in general, whatever we do, it's a very common approach for a human being to think about the resultant state before doing something. If I do this, what could be the result of this? If I do that, what could be the result of that? It's a very common approach. Even before the Buddha, it was existing. The Buddha expounded on that theory of causality. They say that if someone is willing to eat a sweet fruit, so they should cultivate a sweet tree of sweet fruit. If someone is willing to eat a sour fruit, they should cultivate a tree of sour fruit. If someone is willing to eat a hot substance, then they should cultivate a plant or tree of that hot substance. So this is a causality. But then people may feel like, I do eat sweet fruit, but I don't cultivate a tree of sweet fruit. Of course, someone has to do that. If no one cultivates the tree of sweet fruit will not be produced. If sweet fruit is not produced, how can we eat that? So somehow, somewhere it should be, unless the resultant sweet fruit will never exist. So the causality is something that cannot be denied by the science, cannot be denied by anything else. To a certain extent, there are empirical proofs of the causality. So that's the reason why if we go back, like in the modern crime investigation, if something is seen there, they will try to trace the raw source of those things. Nothing comes there by itself. So there is a very wide application of the theory of the causality in every field of specialty, in every profession. Why do we teach our kids? No one is born doctor. No one is born lawyer. No one is born scholar. If we don't teach them, they will never know it. If they will never know it, they cannot use that knowledge in their profession, in their life. So this is a causality. To produce a good lawyer, someone needs to learn, someone needs to teach. To produce a good doctor, we need to do that. So, law of causality cannot be avoided by anything else. It is universal, and it is there is no other option. So, if it is universal, so then life after the death is also a kind of conditioned by the law of causality. So, if life after the death is conditioned by the law of causality, so what kind of thing happens after the death to us? It's all dependent on the cause, what we create now. So, it's a very basic common approach. As I explained, if we need to produce a sweet fruit, we need to cultivate or plant a sweet fruit producing tree. So in the same way, if we are willing to have kind of good life, we should cultivate the causes of good life. If we are willing to have a kind of comfortable life, we should cultivate the causes of comfortable life. If we are kind of willing to have kind of other specific characteristics in our future kind of life after the death, we should cultivate the causes of those things. So, what are the